Some of the most useful time-saving tools in my shop were actually some of the cheapest. So in today's video, we're going to be going over tools that you can pick up for less than 30 bucks that I personally use here in my own shop. And you may be surprised that some of these will actually cost you less than 5 bucks. All right, so this first one is going to be a multi-purpose power switch. Essentially, it's just like a normal power switch, except it has 2 outlets in the back. So you may be thinking, well, all of my tools come with their own power switch, so why do I need this? Let me show you. So as an example, let's say that you have a mobile workbench and you don't want to keep having to walk around your bench to turn your shop vac on and off. We are all guilty of not turning on our dust collection just to make a quick cut, especially if we have to turn it on and then walk back over to turn it off. Or you can simply install this switch under your workbench and save yourself some steps. On portable workbenches, you can also set this up to run a power strip. As long as you're not having multiple big items running at once, you can run the strip through the switch and provide power to several tools at once. And they're also perfect for router tables, so you don't have to keep reaching underneath of this thing. Find the tiny button that turns your router on. Plus, if you have your dust collection tied in, just one flip will turn them both on and off. And if you have a standalone miter saw station with your dust collection set up in a different area, this thing is great for powering on your miter saw and dust collection at the same time. And if you wanted to pair the switch with a foot pedal activator that we've covered in a previous video, you could come up with some really interesting ways to power on and off your equipment quickly. And I know that I'm holding it in my hand, but the little foot switches, they're only 14 bucks a piece. So as you can see by the possibilities with all of its different uses, this little switch setup will be $27 well spent. So if there's any of these items that you see throughout the course of this video that you like, I'll make sure to throw a link in the description for everything. And then we have push blocks. So the push blocks that I prefer are made with an offset handle. The bottom just has a felt-like pad on it. I've actually had this set for over 15 years now, and I use these pretty much daily around the shop. Anything that can keep my fingers away from any type of a spinning blade, I'm game. So we all know about push sticks, and we pretty much use those every time that we use our table saw. But push blocks does something that push sticks can't. And that's to put downward pressure on your material while you're running it through your machine. So let's say for a table saw, they'll come in handy for cuts that do not come all the way through your material, like cutting dados or grooves. Or let's say for your router table. Push blocks help to keep pressure against your fence while controlling your material. And these are a must-have if you have a joiner. These will allow you to put some downward pressure on your material while controlling it and keeping it flush against your fence. The last thing that you want to do with a joiner is to try to feed this material through with your hands. And the main reason for that is your hands will be going directly over the blade while you're joining. And also on the joiner, these things are great for holding your material against your fence to make sure that you're getting a nice flat edge. And if you have a bandsaw, these things are great for keeping equal pressure against the fence and keeping control of your material for a nice even cut. So for 13 bucks, and as much as I use these things, and as long as they have lasted, these things are definitely a no-brainer, and you'll find yourself using these things a lot more than what you'll think. It is here. Woodworking Kickstart is now available, and the path from novice to natural starts now. So if you're ready to unlock and embrace your full potential to create amazing things with your own 2 hands, just head over to this website link, or I'll throw a link in the description. I'll see you there. All right, so this next one is a relatively new addition to the shop, and that's a thin rip guide. So a lot of my projects require ripping down material into thin strips. Up until recently, I've been doing that against the fence. Even though I do all the safety precautions and keep a riving knife on the saw, it still gets a little sketchy whenever you're trying to cut half-inch strips against your fence. So I wanted to find an affordable solution to this, and this is what I came up with. Now there are several different styles of these on the market. What I liked about this one is that it had dual bearings. A lot of them that you see will only have a single bearing. Now, as far as the different brands go, I have no clue. I just kind of picked one and it happened to work out awesome. So these things are designed to fit inside of a T-track, or you can flip this bottom piece around and it'll fit a U-slot. And the setup for this thing is a piece of pie. It came pre-assembled out of the box. So all that you have to do is slide it into your T-track, position it about 2 to 3 inches in front of your blade, and then tighten the 2 black knobs to lock this into place. And once you have it locked into your track, That's all that you have to do is set your fence at the thickness that you want your first strip, and then slide the center part of the guide in towards your material until the bearings barely touch your wood. Then just lock this into place. Then the only thing that you have to do to duplicate this cut is slide your fence in until your material touches your bearings again. This is a super fast way to make repeatable thin strips, and it's a lot safer than cutting these strips against your fence. So like I said earlier, the thin rip guide is relatively new to my shop, but I absolutely love this thing. And the best part of all, for as useful as this thing is, it's only 18 bucks. So for an $18 contraption that not only increases safety, but production, you can't go wrong. All right, so this next one is going to be one of those that you can pick up for right around 5 bucks or less, and that's going to be picks and a needle file set, which I pretty much use as a pick. So back in the day, whenever I worked in a flooring mill, one of my jobs were to change out the blades in the molding machines and the planers. Since we specialize in milling longleaf heart pine, these machines would get caked with resin. So I learned a very long time ago that keeping a pick set handy is a must. And then the needle files are pretty much just like a pick, except they have a little bit of grip to them. I actually have picks in several different locations around my shop because I'm always needing them for something. So like I mentioned earlier, they're perfect for scraping off pitch, resin, and other buildup from saw teeth or router bits. Really pretty much anything with a blade. Miter saw, table saw, band saw, you name it. And you know, as woodworkers, we get sawdust everywhere. And a lot of times we need to clean that out of tight spaces and corners. Ever have a screw get filled full of sawdust or resin that you need to take out? Or how about that crusty glue that always seems to build up on the end of your glue bottle? And probably one of the things that I use these the most for is digging out these super deep staples that always seems like that they were put on by an angry person. They're not only good for digging out staples, but if you work with reclaimed material, they're also great for removing broken nails. And another thing that I use these for all the time is to make a start hole for a drill bit to keep it from walking. So these are some of those dirt cheap tools that have a million different uses. I've actually even used these things to dig out splinters, clean out my fingernails, or pick something out of my teeth. In no particular order. After all, they do kind of look like dental tools. So a year or so ago, I mentioned in a video the type of pencils that I like to use. And it's still the type of pencil that I use every day in my shop. And that's this 9mm sharp pencil by Pentel. And then shortly after that, they put out a fancy version of this. Both 9mm, and they're both made by the same company. And this one's called the Graph Gear 1000. So anything with that kind of a name, it's going to be expensive. But is it worth it? So the Graph Gear 1000 will set you back about 9 bucks. The cheaper version of that is really still not cheap for a pencil, but it's about half price. So the main differences in the two is this one seems to be made out of all aluminum, whereas this one has a plastic housing. And I actually found that I like both of these just for different things. The only thing that I do not like about this one is its weight. Because of its construction, it weighs about twice as much as this one. And I guess it all depends on where you keep your pencil. If you've ever noticed, I'm a pencil in the hat guy. For all you behind the ear people, this thing's going to be too heavy for either one of those. But there are a couple of little added things to this one that I kind of wish that they had on this model. This version, whenever you're ready to use it, you push on the bottom and the lead actually pops out. Or to keep from breaking your lead off or scratching the side of your head with it, you can just push the back of this little clip and it retracts back in. So that is a bonus. I like the way that this retracts. Another good thing about the little clip is that if you wanted to, you can pretty much clip it anywhere that you want. And it would cut down on lost pencils. Where all you couldn't clip it. Ow. Ooh. Don't clip it there. So it really just all depends on how you like to work, but this is a pretty awesome pencil. Personally, I just use this one for graphing and sketching. Then old trusty here for everything else, unless I've lost all of these, which happens a lot. Right, so this next one is going to be engineering squares. All right, so you may be asking, we're woodworkers, why do we need these little engineering squares? They don't even have any measurements on them. Really, they don't need measurements because they are not made for measuring. They're made for precision squaring. Then you may be thinking, woodworkers have a version called a tri-square, so why go with the engineer square? Well, for the most part, an engineer square or a machinist square is pretty much identical to a tri-square. The only difference in some cases is that a tri-square will have a wooden handle and only designed for this precision 90-degree inside angle. A machinist square, you can actually use the inside of the square as well as the outside. And machinist squares are nothing new. Check this one out. This one's probably over 100 years old, has definitely been used, but it's still perfectly square. So of course you can use this square for checking joints for 90 degrees on the inside as well as the outside, but that is just a drop in the bucket of what you can use these things for. They are super handy, and again, an item that I keep in multiple places in my shop. So the great thing about these is that they are built for accuracy for right angles, and that makes these perfect for setting up equipment. So on the table saw, you can quickly check your blade for 90 degrees. On the miter saw, I use it to make sure that my base is square with my fence. Then I'll also use a longer one whenever I'm calibrating my blade to make sure that it is set up for a perfect 90-degree cut. And another one of its many uses is to make sure that your joiner fence is perfectly square with the table. I'll usually do a quick check on this every time that I start my joiner. And then there's some other simpler uses like drawing out dovetails and different types of joinery, or just simply doing a quick check for square on any of your cuts. So again, these things are super handy, and I would recommend having them at different places in your shop. That way that they're easy to get to, because you're going to be using them that much. And the great thing is, these things usually come in a set of 4. This one came out of a set that included a 2-inch, 3-inch, 4-inch, and a 6-inch square, and they were only $24. And this next one I actually use so much that I keep 2 of these, just in case I need to recharge one. That is this magnetic work light. These things are great for just about anything, whether it be in your shop, underneath of a vehicle doing a little work, a piece of equipment, really just anywhere that you need a little extra light. And we all know that no matter how much lighting we install, there's always these little dark spots that you just need to brighten up just so you can keep a closer eye on what you're doing. So yeah, there's 8,000 different types of lights out there. The reason why I like this one, first of all, it's magnetic. A lot of the things that we have around the shop are made of metal. But even if I find myself in an area that is not metal, let's say on one of my workbenches, keep a super cheap 123 block handy, just because of its weight. I can just attach my light to this and set it on any work surface. And as you can see, the light head will actually pivot in about any direction that you want. So I use this light pretty much any time that I go to change a blade. This usually involves getting a little deeper into a machine, and you need a little extra light. And if you're like me on a table saw, it never fails that I always seem to drop the arbor nut. But again, I don't use this just for working on equipment. Anytime that I'm turning anything down on the lathe, I like to have extra light so that I can see everything that's going on. And then the same thing with a bandsaw or drill press. My bandsaw did not come with a built-in light, and again, that's something that you want to keep a close eye on. Another great use for one of these work lights is to check a finish for flaws before it dries. With one of these, even the tiniest piece of dust or imperfection will show up. Looks like I need to turn my light off. So whether you're working on a piece of equipment or just simply looking for a lost screw, which, a little tip, you can use the magnet on the back of this thing to help find it. But the point is this little light actually comes in handy for a ton of different things and can be used for anything. And the great part is whenever I'm not using it, you'll usually just find it stuck to the side of my tool cabinet. So I typically don't like rechargeable lights and things like that. But since this one runs off of LEDs, I find myself having to recharge this thing every so many months. So for a price tag of $18, I would definitely include this little multi-purpose light in my list of shop essentials. So as you can see, you do not have to spend a fortune to add to your shop and its workflow. And again, I'll make sure to link all of the tools that I mentioned in the description. And if you enjoyed learning about budget-friendly tools for your shop, make sure to check out these videos. They are all about shop essential tools that you can pick up without breaking the bank.